Okay.
All right, I've got 10 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning, giving you all the praise and all the glory for letting us meet here and do the county's business. Help us to do it in a way, in a husbandry-like manner. We'll always give you always the praise and the glory. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge this flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, at this time, any person with business before the court not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the court. No formal action can be taken on these items at this meeting. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Summers?
On May the 19th, this court accepted the resignation of the county treasurer, and it's on record that the court would advertise the job opening, take applications for 2 weeks, hold job interviews, and then on June 16th, they would appoint a temporary replacement to the treasurer's position. They did not do any interviews. Instead, on June 5th, they pulled the rug from under a qualified employee. And I apologize to Mrs. Fritz for this court pulling the rug from under you, especially in the manner in which they did. Those of us that are woke know about the nepotism and buddy system that is prevalent in Scurry County. We also know about the county's spending habits and that they purchased an over-the-top vehicle for the health department, and the funds for that vehicle were not in the health department's 2020 budget. Now we're going into the 2021 budget talks, and the current economic situation of the state and this county should warrant budget cuts. This county should not budget in for 2021 any new assets. They should require each employee to pay for a percentage of their own health insurance and continue to pay for their spouse's insurance and or family. Also, this county needs to put a hiring freeze in place for the budget year of 2021. This county should make the effort and give a tax break and tax cuts to their 2021 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay. Court to consider approval of previous court minutes. Do we have any minutes?
They were supposed to get you copies of it.
You got a whole pile of them.
Yeah,
right there.
okay.
Yeah.
There's a few. I still got more to go, but they're getting there.
Yeah, it takes a minute sometimes.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Judge, I've read over them, and
Yep.
best I remember, that's pretty much the way it all happened. So I make a motion to approve the minutes, previous court minutes.
All in favor? All right. Court to discuss and consider inter-precinct project schedules and staffing.
Just do what we do.
Do what you do. Everything's going. Need some rain. Bad. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump down to G. We're gonna hear the presentation of 2019 audit by Conley and Company. Consider accepting same.
You want me to go up here or stay here, or where do you need to?
Wherever you
Okay.
feel comfortable.
All right. I'll just stay here then, since
This is Aaron.
I'm Aaron from Conley.
Nice to meet you, Aaron. Thank you for coming today.
All right, well, you should have 2 documents. One is the big bound audit report, and then one is a deck of slides that are stapled together. I'm just gonna go through the slides, because the report's a little cumbersome to go through, but, if you go to the first page after the cover page, we talk about the audit opinion. we issued a qualified opinion, which is basically an except for. So the numbers in the financial statements are correct, but the county has not implemented GASB 74 and 75, which relate to post-employment benefits. And also the county is using a modified cash basis accounting instead of a full accrual. And so that's been that way for several years. I'm talking to Angela this morning, the county is going to change to a full accrual basis of accounting. So that qualification will go away probably in 2020 if that gets changed. It's not wrong. It's just a different way of doing it, and we have to disclose that in our report. The other one, GASB 75, that requires the county to get an outside actuary report for some benefits, and so I think the county has declined to pay for that actuarial report as a way to cut a few costs. So that one will still be there unless the county elects to adopt that. The next page is really just kind of a table of contents for the big report. Kind of just breaks out the different sections of the report. If you ever wanted to use it to refer to it, may help you go through it. I'm not going to spend much time on that. The next slide start with some of the financial highlights. You can see the one titled Total Assets and Liabilities, GW, that's government-wide, governmental activities. So this does not include your enterprise funds, which are the EMS, airport, Hermley Waterworks, and golf course. So this is just the governmental funds. You can see the far right two columns for 2019. Total assets of 36.7 million, and the red line is total liabilities of 27.5 million. What makes up that blue line of the 36 million? We've got cash of 12.5 million, property, plant, and equipment net of depreciation of 19.9 million, and then there's a deferred outflow which relates to the pension requirements. It's not really an asset, but it shows up as a positive on the balance sheet. And then the liabilities, the red line of 27 million. What makes most of that up is the bonds payable are at 12.2 million. Those started out at 16 million back when the jail law enforcement center was built. And then there's a net pension liability of 4.7 in that number. And then there's a tax collected in advance for the property taxes received early of about 8.2 million. So really pretty strong, asset position. Most of your debt, it relates to the jail that's still being paid down. And Angela said some of that was refinanced or will be.
We've already done
in
it
2020.
earlier this year.
So that'll save some interest on that. Moving on to the next slide. Total assets and liabilities of just the business type activity. So this is the Scurry County EMS, airport, golf course, and Hermley Waterworks. You can see the blue line is the assets, and those have been tracking right about 5.5 million for the last 3 years. What makes up that big blue line? There's cash of about 2.5 million in there, and property, plant, and equipment is the other 2.9 million. You can see the very small number at the bottom at 16,000 is customer deposits related to the waterworks. So not much there's no debt on the enterprise funds. Those leases have all been paid off. So really just cash and equipment there. Moving on to the next slide. Net position in total governmental activities. This is your fund balance. And this is an overall picture, and you can see it's stair stepping down. It decreased from 2018 to 2019 by 862,000 to land at 9.2 million. So still a positive net position. However, I was talking to Angela about this as well. I think in the last probably 5 to 7 years, the enterprise funds have been receiving somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.3 to 1.5 million in your tax allocation, and they have some pretty heavy expenses over there, and so it's kind of taken away from the governmental side. And in theory, those funds should support themselves. However, I think some of them are kind of turning around. EMS had a good year in 2019, but 1.3 million in taxes was still used to help basically keep those four funds at break even. So that's kind of not to say they're causing it all to go down, but if those were supporting themselves a little bit stronger, you would be keeping more tax money, to support the true governmental activities. Moving on to the next slide. This is your net position in those business type funds that I just mentioned. You can see those are really about the same as the assets because there is no debt. So we're right about 5.6 million in net position, with those predominantly being funded by a lot of tax dollars. Moving on to the next one. This is just with net position or fund balance. There's three different types of category within that. Blue is investment in capital assets, red is your unrestricted, and then green is restricted. So of the 9 million or so, you can see 6.86 relates to basically your property, plant, and equipment net of any debt. So that's really just all your buildings, equipment, net of depreciation, and then net of the debt that's offsetting those. Unrestricted is the red line. That's just free and clear net position. And then the green is restricted, about 405,000. That's really just cash restricted for bond payments is what that is. So moving on to the next slide, net position by category of the business type. This is the same type illustration. You can see the blue line again is your investment in capital assets, and then your red is unrestricted. So the enterprise funds don't have much in the way of restrictions. It's all equipment and then cash and other unrestricted items that compose the net position. The next few slides go over the revenue coming into the county. You can see the governmental revenues by type. That red line is general revenue, and the blue line is program. What makes up the red line? 10.1 million in property taxes, 2.5 million in sales tax, and then some other tax collector fees and some other smaller miscellaneous numbers. The blue line is what we call program fees, and those are more charges for services, grants, stuff like that. So this just kind of gives you a breakdown of your total revenue, where that comes from. And then the next slide is really a similar illustration, and this is just the governmental activities. You can see the graph there. The blue line is really all property and sales tax, and you can see in 15, I think generally the tax revenue kind of follows a year behind a lot of the oil and gas valuation. So you can see in 15 it was up pretty high, and then 19 it jumped back up following some of the strong years in late 17, 18 in the oil field. So that's kind of the big picture of the kind of the trend in the tax revenue there. Moving on to the next slide. Again, this is kind of just a breakdown of, well, this is the enterprise funds. So the enterprise funds, which are the EMS, airport, golf course, those are designed to generate their own income. So you can see most of the revenue does come from charges for services. Of that 2.8 million blue line, 2.5 of that was EMS. And then you can see the red line is property taxes. That's the allocation I was referring to. So they received total, all four of those received 1.3 million in property taxes to basically achieve a break-even point for those four enterprise funds. But that kind of shows you where their revenues come from. And then the other is just small miscellaneous gains and losses or other miscellaneous income. Now, the next slide is called fund balance and total. And fund balance is more of the governmental way of accounting, more of a cash in, cash out concept, which is how you budget. So you can see this does not include the enterprise fund. So you can see the fund balance jumped up about 1.6 million from 2018 to 2019. And really that was just the increase in the property taxes that you saw on a few slides before that. So the fund side, the governmental side has kind of turned around a little bit in the last year. Let's see. And then go to the next page, fund balance by type. The county has three, what we call major funds on the governmental side, which are general fund, road and bridge, and law enforcement debt service. So you can see of that total fund balance, the major funds represent 3.3 million, and then the 1.28 million, the red line is all the smaller funds like the probation department, all the other smaller funds that receive mostly grant type stuff. So you would expect to see the general fund, road and bridge to comprise most of that, which that is the case. The last few slides are just housekeeping slides. There is one other document that we did not pass out today. We're waiting on a few signatures, but if we had any difficulties in doing the audit, we were required to tell you guys. We did not. We did do the audit mostly off-site this year, which Angela and Nelda can say it was a little different with the circumstances, but we did get it done pretty much like we would have, just we weren't here for a week. But we got it done and enjoyed working with Angela and Nelda and helping us get it all done. We had no issues completing the audit. There was one control deficiency that it's in the back of the big audit report, and it relates really to your fixed assets. See if you want to find it. Angela may have it. Page 67. Really, we're just recommending that, and Angela's working on this. We recommend that the county do some type of a physical inventory on all the property, plant, and equipment. I know like I said, she's doing that. This will just help with kind of cleaning up, equipment that may not be around anymore.
Sure.
And especially since depreciation is being charged on assets. Really, the purchasing side is pretty straightforward because when you buy it, there's a record of it. Whenever it's traded in or sold, sometimes those are missed. So we just recommend going through that list by department and making sure you have not keeping track of things that aren't in existence anymore. Sure. And I think that'll help with record keeping, just making it simpler and less items to keep track of and things like that. That was really all we recommended. There were a few things that were cleaned up last year with regards to dual signatures and a lot of that stuff, bank recs, those were all worked on and improved, and we noticed that during the audit. And then the very last slide, there were no new governmental standards this year to implement, which was good news for us and everyone else. So there may be one coming up with respect to capital leases or operating leases rather, where if you have a smaller type lease, they're making you book them onto the balance sheet like you would a capital lease. So that's probably coming up in not this year, but next year. So that'll be one thing we'll have to go through and figure out what all leases are and get those recorded and stuff like that. But really nothing else major. The pension and OPEB stuff was the big stuff that came up the last 4 years and hasn't been anything quite that big yet. So that's good. So I just kind of hit the highlights there. If you have any questions about anything, Angela and I can probably try and answer them. I don't want to spend too much time going through that big report because it's a lot of moving pieces there, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Outside of that, again, we appreciate doing the work and enjoy working with you guys. And Appreciate the chance.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
No, pretty straightforward. Looked pretty good. But it couldn't look like, so I'd make the motion to accept the Colleen County's audit report.
All in favor? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, let's go ahead and consider appointing Worsham Auditorium as a temporary, it's not gonna be annex. It's a, what was the term that we discussed yesterday? Judge? Auxiliary for the district court. As you know, with doing a voir dire, you have a lot of people that come in, and the courtroom and this room, the courthouse, would really be too small to have that many people in the current condition, current situation we're in. And district court is looking at we'll have a trial at the end of this month. And so Worsham Auditorium, Judge Armstrong has spoken to the school